Podcasters Roundtable, round 37, no name. There's no name on this round. What the heck went wrong? Well, pretty much everything. So I think that's what this roundtable is going to be about. What happens when all your plans go to heck, right? When nothing works, nobody shows up, everyone cancels. And when you're doing something live, what's the answer for that, right? And if you're doing just a recorded podcast, you might have more options. But yeah, let's find out what happens when everything goes wrong, because for this round, it pretty much did. So Daniel's laughing because you'll see it's just Daniel and I. Daniel didn't even know what the topic of this round was going to be, right? He jumped on and there was no name for it, as I mentioned, and I kind of just let that fly.
I just show up and we end up talking about podcasting.
Well, that's the key. So I'm gonna address that a little bit in a second here. This is going to be the most authentic Podcasters Roundtable ever, because it's truly going to be, well, almost. I actually kind of gave us a direction here at the beginning, but it's as close to the core of Podcasters Roundtable, the concept, as I think we've ever been. So, Daniel, welcome to the Roundtable.
Thank you. I'm from theaudacitytopodcast.com, and now it makes sense why you were commenting on my setup being perfect for tonight.
That's right, because I get on and I look at Daniel and I'm listening to the audio and I figure he's setting up and things just don't look the same, right? And so then I think Daniel says it's okay he asked me if I know where he's coming in from or something like that, and he's coming in from his phone. Is that right?
Yeah, it's not completely my phone, but the situation is that my regular MacBook is being repaired right now, and I was borrowing my wife's MacBook during the course of my workday, but she's home right now, and I wanted to be able to let her have her MacBook for the evening. So then it was, well, what else can I use? And I realized, hey, I think I can join a Hangout from my iPhone or my iPad. And so I plugged it in. Sure enough, it could work. And I have this audio cable. It's an analog cable. It's called an iPod AV cable. That one end is the tip ring sleeve, 3.5 millimeter, basically like a headphone jack, but with an extra stripe on it. And plug that into my iPhone. So I am talking through my Heil PR40 into my mixer that's then plugged with a $4 cable into my iPhone. And that's where my iPhone is picking up the video. My iPhone is handling the streaming to the Hangouts, and then I'll use my iPad to actually watch the comments in the chat room.
So all this being done over Wi-Fi, obviously, I'm assuming, not LTE. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
All this being done over Wi-Fi. So, hey, here's the results you can get from going in via Wi-Fi, at least. And Daniel's got, as he explained, a whole way to get his microphone into his phone. Although I will say, listening to it, knowing the PR40 and its sound, it does sound like you're coming through on your earbud microphone, which is fine, acceptable. But so there's some translating there of the audio that's really kind of dumbing it down to what almost sounds like a phone.
Yeah, I have no controls over the quality of the video or the quality of the audio. Right now I'm using the front-facing camera. I tried switching to the rear-facing camera, and the quality seemed the same for me. As long as I'm not moving around a lot, You shouldn't notice as much.
That's a good tip in general for video. The more you move around, the more the camera has to work, the more compression happens, right? So the least you can move, the better it handles. Even on like a nice webcam like this, moving around can actually degrade the quality of the video. But Fred in the chat room asks, "Where is Dave Jackson?" Let's talk a little bit, or I'll talk a little bit about what exactly went wrong. Now, if you live on the edge like I do with the Roundtable, if you've received an email from me to be on the Roundtable, it often starts off something like, "I realize this is short notice." So typically, these are thrown together pretty late, although I will say I actually have the next one already planned, and Daniel doesn't even know what that is yet, so I'll let him in on that. You guys don't let me forget to tell you what that one is, because it is already ready to go in 2 weeks from now. And so let me talk a little bit about what I was planning. I was planning around, well, first we're going to talk about cheap or free podcasting and how to get that done. And we will certainly save that for another round because, several people write in. In fact, if you go out to podcastersroundtable.com and you sign up to be on the list, then you will get something that will notify you. You'll get a form that says, hey, what do you want to talk about? And a lot of people want to talk about podcasting for cheap or free, which probably means the same thing because you can't really podcast for free unless you want to go down to the library, use their computer, and host on archive.org. But anyways, we can dig into that in another round. So that was lining that up. Could not get the people that I wanted to be on. They couldn't make it. Then I pivoted. I was interviewed last night for Podcast Junkies, a podcast you've been on, and I hope that's the actual title, but it's Harry from Podcast Junkies, and he threw out an idea. I told him about the one word thing that we did, iTunes Go, right? And he's like, what about one word, any word, and you just kind of go off that. And I said, okay, we'll call it wild card, right? And you can come on and you can do it. And I think he's actually going to show up here, and he's probably expecting to do the wild card, which I don't think we're going to do, but we could play around with it. I was going to do that. And what was cool about that is it gave me the opportunity to go way back to people, early 2013, people had signed up. And I contacted pretty much anybody who had wanted to be on the roundtable all the way back through 2013. And not a single person could make it. Everyone's like, oh, it turns out a lot of people record their podcast on Thursdays. It's just Thursday's the day for whatever reason. Here we are doing on Thursdays, but Thursday seems to be a really popular day for recording podcasts. So that fell apart. And notice you're missing Dave Jackson. So Dave emails me. He's planning to be here. I've got some topics for Dave. We'll do the wild card. Dave's car bites the dust. Goner. No longer exists. Engine just dead. I mean, he's literally test driving and buying a car as we speak. I believe he picked up some jalopy or some really bad car. Has enough to get a podcast into it and get him to and from work. But he may show up as well. So as I'm going along, setting this up over the last 2 days, things are just everything. Nothing is working, right? So I guess one of the questions is, this is a live stream. Do we cancel it, right? Do I cancel it? Should I have canceled this, Daniel? Am I wasting your time?
No. No to both. You're not wasting time. And I think that you should not cancel something like this. In fact, the first time I decided to go live, it was to help me to stay consistent with my podcasting. It was when I was doing my clean comedy podcast, and which I still do today, but it took me 2 years to release only 9 episodes. And I realized that's pathetic. And among all of my plans for how I would be more consistent with it, one of the things I decided to do was I will go live so that I'll have that accountability that people will be expecting content on a particular day at a particular time live. Maybe not many people. I think it was 1 or 2 who watched the live stream then. But I knew by committing to that it would mean that every now and then I would have a dud and not have the great content, not be all that funny, but I would have something out there and at least connect with the people who came out to the event. So I don't think, it depends on the kind of show, I guess, but if you're doing something live, I think it's better to keep that commitment than cancel it at the last minute, but I've been guilty of that as well.
Yeah, and for me, I can pull this off one time, right? This gives us content in this specific case. We're podcasters talking about podcasting and what happens when all your plans kind of go down the tubes, especially when you have a live show. Now, I've had other instances, I think early in the beginning of the Podcaster Studio, when I live streamed, and I think I had an interview and they canceled. And it's like, wow, I've got a live stream and an interview. And so it's interesting to kind of think about what you do when it all goes wrong. But, this gave me, like I said, I was trying to get a lot of old roundtablers or want to be roundtablers on here, and that didn't work out. But for me, what you're seeing right here, Daniel and I talking about, really, we're just talking about kind of what happened and what's going on. And this is the core. I'll talk a little bit about how Podcasters Roundtable came to be real quick. When Google announced, or I heard that they were going to do Hangouts on air, and then I heard they were going to release it to the public, I said, I've got a show for that, because there'd be times where I'm on Skype with Dave or with Daniel or someone else that's a podcaster. And, we may have just done an interview, or we may have just gone on the line to talk about something else. And, hey, I'll jump on. Hey, Daniel, can you jump on Skype with me for 10 minutes? I have a question about X. 1 hour and 10 minutes later, we're still there, right? We're still there talking about podcasting. So these are the conversations that I was already having with my friends who were podcasters. And when Google announced, hey, you can now do this live thing, this chat, essentially, video chat, online, out to anybody, up to 10 people, I was like, I have a show for that. I have a perfect show for that. And, to my surprise, other people, all you guys and girls in the chat room, enjoy tuning in. This is the most fun show I do. And I mean, of course it is. I get to sit here and talk to my friends, and I get to meet new podcasters. So if you're a podcaster, go sign up at Podcasters Roundtable. Get on the list. Tell me what you want to talk about, and we'll get in here and do the roundtable. And it's really evolved into me allowing other podcasters to have a voice, especially to share all their experience producing podcasts, because everybody has this amazing wealth of experience. Whether you've been podcasting for 6 months or 10 years, you may not share much of that on your show. Well, you can come here and share it with us. So that's really cool. So this is what we're doing right now. Daniel and I just kind of talking. This is exactly what the roundtable what I originally thought the roundtable would be, and I had to shape it a little bit. I think it's good to, we now have a topic that we usually follow for each round, and so much so that I couldn't even avoid it this round, where I was like, oh, I better frame it a little bit. What happens when things go wrong? And so I think that's good. It provides a little structure, but then I'm cool with it going wherever it goes after that. So anyways, if Dave was here, I don't know if you've heard, and you being everyone out who's watching this or listening to this later in the audio-only podcast version, subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you listen. And and I know Daniel has heard this, but Dave, our co-host, Dave Jackson, School of Podcasting, was named Director of Podcasting for the New Media Expo for 2015, which is, applause. Huge roars go up. I think that's completely awesome. I think he's exactly the right person for the job. I don't know that anybody in our space has more contact with, I would say, the average podcaster than Dave, right? I think Dave's really down in the trenches talking to podcasters that have, 50 people who listen to their show, 25 or thousands. So Dave really, I think, expands through the whole continuum of podcasters, and he's been here since the beginning, right? So Dave's a perfect pick. So I'm excited to see what he's going to do for that. Now, submissions are due, I believe, tomorrow to speak.
Right.
So if you haven't submitted, if you're hearing this live, you can still submit to speak to NMX. And I was going to ask Dave a little bit about what he's looking for in a speaker. We've had a couple different rounds on going to conferences, but what about speaking at conferences? Daniel and I have both done that. In fact, we've done it individually. We've been on a panel together, and we've done a live roundtable. So we've done a lot at conferences, but what about speaking? I know a lot of people probably want to speak at a conference, and PodCamp is a great first place to do that, although I don't know how many chances you have. PodCamp Pittsburgh, I just saw that come out the other day. So one still exists. If you're near Pittsburgh, check it out. And those are good places, but there's meetup.com has groups. Daniel, do you know, like I said, Dave wants people he wants you to list the takeaways. What are people going to come into your session with, or come into your session to hear, and then what are they going to walk away with, right? And do you know any of the other guidelines he kind of spoke about that he's looking for?
Yeah, I'm trying to check it up on his site now, but essentially it's that he really wants to make sure that the content that you share is dynamite content. This is high value content that people are going to get something from this. It's not going to be promo time. Have research behind this stuff. I know that was one of the points that he brought out, is don't just say most podcasters don't make it to past their 7 episode.
Right.
Actually cite some research on that. Or if you say this will grow your podcast by hundreds, well, have you grown your podcast by hundreds with that? Or who else has used that, and what kind of results have they gotten? So anything that you can use to back your actual information to then give a better presentation will help you, and help your audience too, to recognize, oh yeah, that does work, or that is an awesome way to think about it.
Yeah, and so that might help you a little bit if you're going to submit, but definitely in the future too. I mean, really just it needs to be well planned out. And I don't know if this is based on experience that he's gone to sessions. I'm a pretty picky conference goer. When I go to a session, I'm always like, ugh, give me something. I want to be able to go out of that room that you're speaking and implement kind of right now, right? If I wanted to log on my website and make a change, or if I wanted to think about my show and how I'm going to integrate this new piece of advice. It's nice if I can have something, take it back to my podcaster's studio, like that plug, and apply it right away, right? That's something I want to do. So yeah, maybe Dave will, chug on down the road and he'll be in here to talk a little bit more. What else were you going to say there?
Here are his points. Awesome. If you go to his website, his personal website, davidjackson.org, he has a post from this month, October 2014, where he says the do's and don'ts of presenting at New Media Expo. He says, define your audience, don't wing it, avoid the same old song and dance, don't do the same thing you did last year. Remember you're talking to adults, back it up, be prepared, different levels of detail, pay attention to those, and at the end of the presentation, what is it that you want the audience to take away? And then he also points out some things that he's seen from some great presenters, and especially the book, Secrets of Dynamic Communication by Ken Davis, which is an amazing book at learning how to present better. It's basically the SCORE conference that Michael Hyatt talks about all the time, condensed down into a book.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
All of that. Yeah, the way that he's approaching this is really, don't let this just be like a PodCamp presentation where you're all casual and you're just having a conversation. Make this something dynamic, powerful, engaging, and helpful to your audience.
And Fred throws in the chat room, podcastreporter.com, episode 27. I believe he had Dave on his show, Podcast Reporter, and he outlines it there. So check podcastreporter.com, episode 27 for that sort of outline in audio. And don't wait because deadline is approaching. But, if you want to speak anywhere, I think it's good tips. And especially if you want to speak next year. Remy in the chat, he says, it's tricky to know when to cancel and when to go on. This, of course, going back to what happens when it all kind of goes to heck in a handbasket, right? He said he had one show where Rob Sestanero joined me. Rob, shout out, former Roundtabler. Both my co-host couldn't make it. I did the show with Rob and then another version of the show a few days later with my co-host and tried to merge both shows into one. 12 hours of editing later, it came out sounding good, but I'd never do that again. Yeah, I'm not doing that ever.
Every podcaster has to do that once.
Yeah, it does feel like we've run into those nightmares. You're going to run into some type of podcast nightmare along the way.
I've had a time where, because of the way that I schedule some of our live shows, we'll do 2 shows on a Wednesday night, split in between by rewatching a TV show, then we do the podcast about it. And I was having some technical problems this one time, and I just could not get things working in time for our normal comedy podcast, which came first on that night. So we had to tell them in the chat room, hey, I'm sorry, we just can't get this working. We'll have it working by the time that we do this other podcast, but we can't do it right now. So enjoy the chat. We'll be back next week. And we still engaged with them in the chat room at least. So we were there. We just couldn't do a podcast. We've also had a time where we lost power while we were live streaming. And all we really needed to do there is just wait for the power to come back on. And we pieced it back together because I was recording to a battery-powered recorder. We didn't lose anything. And in the worst case, we have had to reschedule where we lost power and it never came back on. So we just said, hey, let's do this again tomorrow night.
Yeah. And I will say that for each round, so if you go to podcastersroundtable.com, all the archives, both the video and audio archives live there for each round that we do here. But I also try to usually, at least now, link to the event page. And I played with different ways to get all the comments into the website, but it's just easier to link to the event page because it's a good resource to have because what I'm seeing right now, so Remy Daniel, yourself, Fred, all of you, the chat room, they post links as we go along to stuff we said, right? So if I don't get those into the show notes, this is always a great resource beyond just checking out the chat. Like you can just see the conversations that happen, which are always resourceful because people are trading tips and tricks and experiences that they've learned. So always check out the event page. If you hear links and you just don't find it, it's on the event page. People are always posting them there. So that's another good resource. Now, I did mention Harry. He appears to be here. So we will at least get him in the roundtable. We'll have a new roundtabler, not a complete loss, but no, it's good so far.
Well, I'm going to throw this question to you as well.
All right.
You are working with other people. You are a professional podcast producer by day. And what happens there when they're supposed to give you content and they didn't get it in time, or for some reason, depending on your workflow there with them, how is it that you work out things there? Do you just skip an episode, cancel it, reschedule? What do you do when things go wrong with them?
We've had either we usually know. So we've had different things where it says we just know we're not going to have an episode. You have 52 weeks in a year. Probably 49 of those have podcasts. They might have one. We don't do live. At least we don't do live. We do live podcasts, but they're special events. And we haven't had those. We will have people not show up, but we're ready for that because we usually have more than 2 people on any one panel that we do live. So we're always ready with a backup. I will say we get phone numbers from people now, which was my idea when we did have a complete collapse and people were supposed to be there live and no one was there. It's like, why don't we have the ability to call these people? We get phone numbers, and that's nice. For podcast stuff, I usually know ahead of time if someone's going to have an issue. I've never had an issue because my hosts are good about getting things recorded well enough in advance, right? Because I'm going to edit it, so they've got to get it to me early to edit. And if it's not to me at a certain time, I'm knocking on their door virtually, and I'm saying, hey, where is no podcast this week, or what's going on, right? And then we work it out. But I can't recall a lot of instances where we just weren't able to go with content.
So you've got basically a large enough buffer that if something goes wrong,
large enough being okay. Like a couple days, right? Like if they said, hey, I'm stuck somewhere and I can't record then we just wouldn't have a podcast. I mean, we really wouldn't. And I'm not sure that we would even, because they're so consistent, it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but I'm not even sure we would put anything in the feed that would say, hey, we're not here this week. It's just not there on Thursday, which it's just so rare. We may put something out on social media, right? Or try to connect with our audience that way, but we don't put in special audio that says, hey, no podcast this week. Or, there is the opportunity to, I'm not sure. I feel like one of the hosts, I feel like we did a rerun one time, but, that may or may not have happened. Yeah. I just don't come up against that very often in the network that I produce at work.
I think the key is having some kind of backup plan. That doesn't mean you have to have constant running redundancies. I've talked to podcasters who say, whenever I record into this, and at the same time I record into this and this and this. And they're running 5 different things. And I've asked them, when has it ever failed? And you've had to use one of those other backups, and it's usually like just once. So they're almost being overly redundant sometimes. But I think it's good to have a backup plan. Like in my case here, I knew that what was my option, whether to have the computer tonight. And I realized, no, I've got a backup method of something I can use. And actually, this would be my second backup, because my primary system, my regular computer, is being repaired. My wife's computer is my backup to many things. I've had to resort to that before. And then if that computer's not working, then I could switch to an iPad or an iPhone. So having some kind of backup method is ideal for these things, like a rain date, or just knowing if this doesn't work, then we'll do this. If I can't live stream to video, then I'll just switch over and do audio only. and tell everyone go to this page instead, or something like that.
Yeah, it's nice too if you have the type of show where you can actually just sort of have something in the can. That would be nice. I always tell podcasters, if you have that type of show that's not news, here's even a fly buzzing around my head today, right? So everyone wants to irritate me a little bit, but no one's irritating me. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, if you're able to get ahead by 3, 2, at least one show, that helps a lot, right? Because even not an interviewee canceling is one thing, but you're going to get sick. You're going to have a family emergency. Dave's car broke down. He can't even get to where he's going, right? So stuff happens. Have you had an interviewee cancel on you at the last second?
Yes, it was for our Once Upon a Time podcast. We were going to interview one of the actors from the show, and I think it was the day of the event, not right at the last second, but it was the day of the event. We'd arranged our schedule around this, and they said, hey, sorry, he's really busy today. Can we please switch it to tomorrow? And the key when working with celebrities is be as accommodating as possible. Work around their schedule. So, yeah, thankfully, it wasn't a problem for us. My co-host that actually has a regular job wasn't working the next day, so it worked out for us to just switch it over. And there have been other things, too, and I just had something last week. I was going to record an episode of the Audacity to Podcast about the feeds that you get from PowerPress. I'd started my day writing my show notes. My show notes were almost done. It was about an hour before I was going to record, and I happened to be chatting with Angelo Mandato, the developer of PowerPress, and asking him for some verification on a couple things. And then the light bulb went off. Why not just have Angelo come onto the podcast and we talk about this together? It was way too last minute, but we decided to put off that topic, do it, and we're at this point it's going to be the next episode that we'll do together. And so I had 30 minutes to come up with a new topic. So I rushed to prepare, looked back at my list of episode topic ideas, rushed my preparation for something, and I felt like the episode did suffer a little bit. Ironically, that episode, and here's transparency for you, tell me if anyone who hears this can tell that the episode sounded rushed or last minute prep, but it was the episode where I shared podcast production mistakes that podcasters make.
Nice. What's the number one production mistake?
One of them, not planning, basically. Well, production mistakes, I would say number one production mistake is volume levels. In some way, like inconsistent, low volume, high volume.
Yeah, a new one or not a new one that I'm seeing, but one that I see fairly common is that they'll get a podcaster will get a professional bumper made, and whatever that means, whether it's actually professional, but someone else will make a bumper, or even they'll make one themselves, and it is drastically different in audio level than the actual content, right? So you get this bumper, this one loudness level, and then they join the mic and it's really low. All of a sudden they're talking. It's like, welcome to Podcasters Roundtable. Hey, welcome to Podcasters Roundtable today. It's like this dramatic difference. And in fact, what I see a lot of times is I also see that difference from when you go to pre-recorded into an interview, whether that interview was recorded at a separate time, because they are recorded different times. Okay, they oftentimes the levels don't match, and you're like, whoa, it just sounds so different. Or then they'll do the fake transition, like the pre-recorded part will stop. We're saying, hey, Daniel, welcome inside the podcaster studio. And then in the recorded interview, it'll be like, you'll say, hey, thanks, Ray. And then it's just this is like this, you fell off a staircase of audio levels. So, I'm pro post-production, but if you don't know what you're doing, it can be tough. And even if you don't have a trained ear, you may not even notice it yourself. But that is one production mistake I definitely see.
I've had moments too where the audio that was recorded ended up being horrible. I got to review a microphone once, and I thought, I'll record an episode of the Audacity podcast with this new microphone. And then at the end, see if the listeners noticed a difference. So I recorded this whole episode, then I listened to my audio, and I realized I had the gain too high. And so almost the entire episode I was clipping, and it sounded horrible.
Yeah.
So I decided there's no way I can save this. I'm just going to do the whole episode all over again. And I did, and there have been several times actually where I've redone the episode because maybe I just felt like I made far too many mistakes to try and edit out. Like I got my episode number wrong, or maybe it was just for some reason my brain just wasn't there. I just couldn't flow with the content very well. Every time I've redone an episode, I've always been happier with the second take and always felt like, wow, that was so much better that I'm glad I did it a second time. It almost makes me think I should record my podcast episodes twice.
Well, I mean, let's think of it this way. I mentioned we've spoken at various conferences. How many times did you rehearse that speech before you actually gave it, right? It's so much better the second, third, 15th time that you give it, right? So, I mean, at Podcast Movement this last year, I had a catastrophic computer problem that caused me basically to stay up all night and redo my presentation over. Right up until about 20 minutes till I had to leave, go downstairs to speak. I was working on it. And, you know, my presentation was much better for it because I had spent all night looking and working on that content, right? My eyes, it was an interesting 24 hours following that because then, you know, I spoke and then we go into the conference and then we go into the night after that, you know, hanging out with people. And I did not sleep for a solid 24 hours. And there is something weird that happens to you when you don't sleep after about 24 hours. You start to get on this weird, bizarre brain trip. It's quite interesting. So, well, Harry, welcome to Podcasters Roundtable, man.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Awesome. Oh, I'm really privileged to be on here. Hey, Daniel.
Yeah. Daniel, do you hear Harry?
No.
That's interesting.
Nah, I think you're fine.
Just be catching up.
Yeah, I think it's Daniel. It looks like his bandwidth is a little. It's Wi-Fi, right? Although I'm doing this on Wi-Fi too, which is a cardinal sin. But hey, welcome as a new roundtabler from a hotel room somewhere.
San Jose.
Oh, beautiful, luxurious San Jose, California. Yes. Hey, so. Okay, I don't know when you got here or when you got in the chat. I kind of explained how we got to where we are in this round that has no name. And I talked about our concept of wild card, and we were going to have some fun for that. And you probably even thought that was going to happen right up until this moment when you're saying, what's he talking about? But we're kind of talking about what happens when all your plans sort of fall apart. And that's kind of what happened for this roundtable, but I also thought it would make fun content for this round to say, hey, when you go into your podcast and you have a plan, especially when you're live streaming and it does not work out, how do you use a big marketing word, pivot? Oh, that sounds terrible. How do you shift and what do you do, right? So, Harry, I was just on your show. Daniel's been on your show before. Have you had a guest cancel on you before?
I have had guests reschedule, and I've had to basically, you know, we talked about this, like the rigidity of sticking to a weekly schedule, having to turn out or feeling this pressure that you need to turn out content weekly or else you're disappointing your audience or else you're failing them. And so there's definitely two schools of thought, and I was really holding steady to that, and I felt really bad when I missed an episode because a guest canceled. But I think I did hear Dan, you mentioned something about having backup plans, and I probably didn't have enough people either scheduled or I was just cutting it too close where I'm literally recording and then going to publish like two or 3 days later. So I guess, you know, yes, it has happened, and probably the way to fix that is to at least be 2 weeks ahead so you're not feeling the pressure to just squeeze something in or just do something on the fly like Daniel had to do.
And what did you do about not being in the feed that week?
I just had to bite the bullet and just say real stuff happens. I addressed it. I didn't pretend it didn't happen. And then in the intro to the next episode, I said, "Hey guys, I know, you know, I said this would be weekly, but you know, real stuff happens, real life happens, and I'm just going to keep trying and doing the best I can and just communicate that." And I think your audience appreciates that a bit more.
So I mentioned your show. Why don't you tell us real quick what your show is?
Yeah, so my show is Podcast Junkies, and it was another show that was born out of NMX, as a lot of them seem to originate from, and it was this past January. I saw the Cliff Ravenscraft talk that was introed by Chris Murphy. Chris Murphy and I started talking. I started bouncing an idea off him. I said, I'm a fellow podcast junkie. I really like listening to podcasts, and I really like the stories behind the podcast. And I know folks have been doing it for a long time, folks like yourself, folks like Daniel and Dave and Elsie. And I want us to talk to those people and get their stories. So that's where it came from, and that's what I've been on a mission to do.
So why did you go to NMX in the first place?
I had a mobile app. It was for electronic music DJs, and I thought maybe I could start a podcast to interview those DJs. That actually didn't pan out, but I saw what was happening. I actually saw John Lee Dumas's talk as well, and I said, well, let me go after something where I know there's actually people that I want to interview that are in this room right now with me, as opposed to finding a future guest that I may not even have found guest one. So here's a lot of folks that I would love to talk to that are just as excited about the medium as I am. So why not start there?
So wait, your show's not about entrepreneurs? How does that happen? How do you talk to John and not be an entrepreneur? Yeah. I'm giving a hard time, but yeah, so it's sort of a podcast about podcasting, right? Sort of. Is that what it's about?
Yeah, a podcast about podcasters.
About podcasters, and how many episodes?
We're up to 25 now.
All right, we've seen this. We've seen variations on this, right? You know Nick Suberling? He's been on the Roundtable. He did a. Gosh darn it, I'm blanking on the name. It's SPNT.
Start Talking and Recording Today.
Start Talking and Recording Today. START, acronym, right? Which was similar, right? And I'm not sure he's still doing that, but so it's great to see someone still capturing those stories. I got Corey. He's a former Roundtabler. He's jumped in here, although I only see a still image. So, Corey, you there? We'll give Corey a minute. I think he might be setting up. So Harry, yeah, let's do. I don't know about our whole round. It sounded like fun, but I know you thought of you had planned. We asked Harry to do a little homework for the. Let me dive into the light there. We do a little homework, and so let's play a little wild card. All right, Harry, why don't you give us? We won't play a whole bunch, but give us maybe your best couple, starting with, I don't know, start anywhere you like. Let's do this.
So everyone understands what the premise is?
Actually, go ahead. It was your idea, so go for it. We developed it together on the mic, but go for it.
Yeah, so basically, Ray and I were talking and about his most recent episode where he just went one word, iTunes. And then I sort of had the idea. I said, well, what you need to do really is just come up with wildcard words where you don't give the guest or the people who are coming on the roundtable an inkling to what the keyword will be or the wild card will be, and just put it out there. It could be a silly word, and I was just feeding off Ray's energy when he was saying what the intent of the roundtable was. It's just a lot of people hanging around the table talking about all random things, and somehow at the end of the day we tie it back to podcasting. So
nice, and that's exactly what we're doing, and I explained today this is the most sort of authentic podcasters roundtable we've had because we are sort of doing that. We're gathering and we're talking about podcasting. So I'm getting, see this? I don't know, I'm sorry. I'm enjoying, as I'm looking at my own camera myself, I'm enjoying the video today. I've got a nice big giant natural light. As you have to, if you watch the episode, you can see the bright light there. You see me adjusting light, but I'm even getting some little bit of a little shallow depth of field back here because the long room that I'm in. So anyways, I'm a video guy. I can't help but to geek out when I see some cool stuff on video. That said, Corey, welcome to the roundtable. Old hat for you.
Hey Ray, how's it going?
Awesome. And maybe boost your audio up a little bit there. Maybe you heard the rules of the game, but right now we're about to play Wild Card on Podcasters Roundtable with your host Harry from Podcast Junkies. Do you actually have podcastjunkies.com, Harry?
Yes.
You do. So, because Fred asked in the chat room, he says, Harry, is this the same Podcast Junkie show that has been published since 2007 with Megan? Do you know what he's referring to?
That is not, considering I started this year.
Yeah. Do you know what that is?
I don't actually.
You might have to go look that up then. See
I
what's
know
what's
there was a Twitter account that had Podcast Junkies, but there was like 3 posts on it. So I wasn't able to grab that. So mine's actually podcast_junkies.
Is it still just sort of sitting there barren? My pet peeve of the abandoned Twitter account that you want but can't get.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't contact anybody either.
Twitter claimed they were going to solve it. They claimed they were going to kill those accounts at some point. They just never did. I even put my name in. Hey, notify me when this is available. I think most of us have probably been down that road before, trying to get a Twitter name that wasn't available. But
one thing I did hear, speaking of podcasts, was the guys from the Fizzle show, Chase Reeves, Corbett Barr. They had the same issue with Fizzle. At Fizzle, I think what Corbett did was incorporate the name, and the minute he did that, he said Twitter basically handed over the reins of the name because it's a business name and they couldn't squat on it.
Very interesting. Yeah. Well, I mean, even the person who has my name, Ray Ortega. It's the only place on social media I don't think I've ever been able to get my name, and I was a little late. Late to Twitter means not much. I mean, it still was early, but my name was gone. It's fairly common. I've contacted the guy countless times. Of course, it's no use for me to contact him via Twitter. He doesn't use it very much, but he's the president of some company, and but he just doesn't use it. And I'm trying to buy this thing. Let me buy it from you, please. Let me make Ray Ortega. Let's respect the name there. But I own Ray Ortega on Google as far as it goes, but not Twitter. I can't get on Twitter. But anyways, Harry, let's play wild card.
Okay. The first word is keyboards.
Keyboards. My keyboard is filthy, right? Like I just noticed it the other day where I looked down. I'm like, it's the white tile, and if I could show it here, no, the cord won't make it. It's the white Mac keyboard. So it's going to get dirty. So I was just thinking the other day, wow, I really need to get that thing clean. So if you enter my podcast studio and you see a dirty keyboard, at least from the where you've been hitting, sorry.
Do you have one of those? Do you have one of those silent keyboards that doesn't make any noise?
No, it's the like the Scrabble keyboard.
Okay.
Which I didn't think I would like at all at first. I hated them when they came out with them. Now I love it. I love typing on it. But yeah, who else? Keyboard. What's that make you think of, Corey?
Keyboard. Well, you mentioned. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you mentioned yours is dirty. I have a really bad habit of eating cereal at my computer, and so I have milk splatters all over, which is really gross.
That is gross. Clean up your keyboard.
I know. When I sit in the daylight, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. Well, I guess keyboard makes me think cereal.
Right. Daniel, can you connect keyboard with podcasting?
Yeah. Get a Bluetooth keyboard if you podcast from an iPad.
There you go. Hey, Harry, you mentioned silent, right? That can be a big benefit when you're doing a podcast recording, right?
Yeah, it's very obvious when people are taking notes on their keyboard as opposed to jotting them down, because it's like the clickety-clackety going away, and sometimes you hear it in the show and you're like, oh man, just write it down. Yeah,
I think I've had to tell people, hey, even on this show, hey, stop tapping on your keyboard, please. Now, I think it's gone. Just recently, over the last few rounds, Google had this thing that would mute you if you were using your keyboard. Like it would know you're using your keyboard and it would put you on mute, and it caused all kinds of weird issues with us, right?
Automatically, that's interesting.
Yeah, it knew you were typing, right, Daniel?
Yeah, it would mute you even while you were talking. It paid no attention to what you were actually doing. Just
it would say like
typing, gone.
Yeah. So I think they probably heard a lot of blowback on that, because I don't see that happening anymore. Awesome. Got another word for us, Harry?
So
did we win? How do we win this game? I don't know.
Yeah, we have to figure out what the rules are, or maybe with some in the chat, the fan favorite.
There you go. Dirty milk splattered keyboard.
If they're not grossed out already. Remember, these are top of mind. Free.
It's all right. You don't have to justify them. We're not going to think you're weird when you throw out,
okay.
Mouse or something.
The next one is cloudy days.
Wow, how dreamy. Well, I'm here in California. Now, cloudy days makes me think of the light, right, that I'm getting, right? So I teach people how to shoot really high-quality video, and one of the ways to do that cheaply with light, and daylight is my favorite lighting if you know how to use it. And however, if you're sitting in front of a window and a cloud comes over the sun, your light's going to change dramatically in all your settings. And in fact, it's happening constantly as I sit here. The sun is setting here in California, and I'm constantly adjusting my light, which I get to do with webcam settings panel or webcam settings app that I have for my Mac. It lets me take control of my webcam. But that's, as a videographer, all I think about is the light when you say cloudy days. That and like seeing mice and cheese and dogs. Apparently, I only see animals and food in clouds, but that's what I think of.
But that's a separate episode, right?
Yes, it's a different show altogether. Psychology Today.
Yeah.
Rorschach clouds. Corey.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Ray. I do a video podcast for my work, and the last couple years I've been in a room that's been affected by the light and everything, and that's, I'll do like 15-minute segments, and when the clouds come over, all of a sudden the sun's blasting in and changing everything. That really has an effect on it. But I don't know. I mean, cloudy days. Well, you could also take that audio-wise, and a cloudy day could mean rainy, and that you might have some outside noises that you need to work around. And living in the Midwest, we have lots of thunderstorms and stuff. So, I really do kind of take that stuff into consideration. If I know storms are coming through, I'll change the time that I'm going to record, even if we're doing, my co-hosts are in other areas and we do it through Google+. We still take that into consideration because we might lose power. There might be huge, rumblings of thunder and stuff like that. But so I guess that's what I think of.
Yeah, it's an interesting consideration when you have a podcast, and we are, of course, most of us are not in an actual podcast studio. We are in our homes, so noise from the outside can certainly leak in to our recordings. And as I sit here, obviously I'm in my dining room here, and this is a temporary setup, and I will at some point in the near future move out to the detached garage, which is going to be converted into my studio. And I'm thinking about all that, right? So I'm thinking of there's this stuff called Quiet Rock, and it's really just it's specialized sheetrock that helps with sound isolation. It'll keep more of the sound out, right? And so I'm thinking about these things. If I'm going to put up new walls, what do I want to do to sort of help? But I also have this carport that is connected to this detached garage, and it's got like a metal roof, and above it is a tree that dropped these little berries right about this time of year, and it's constantly like tick tack, tick 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 tack. I'm like, that's not going to work in a recording environment. So I'm going to have to. I have this image of me going up there and just putting a bunch of cardboard on the roof or something terrible. So I'm going to have to solve that issue.
Net.
A net. They're so small. I mean, it'd have to be a really thin net. A what?
Tarp that could catch it, kind of like a nice little cushion landing for them.
Yeah, and then now, and welcome to your newest chore, Ray. You got to go up and empty the tarp every week. Have fun with that. Oh man, cloudy days, Daniel.
Cloudy days?
Well, both of you guys said what I was thinking. So the other thing is cloudy days. It's probably going to rain. Don't mow the yard. Stay inside. Record a podcast.
Nice. A chance, an opportunity. Daniel sees opportunity to get some content produced. What's next?
So, actually, as you guys were talking, cloudy days also reminds me of the mood you're in when you're podcasting. Sometimes you're not, feeling 100%, but you still got the show scheduled, and you've got to give the guest your all. So lately I've been standing to try to get my enthusiasm going more, but there's been times when I've just had I wasn't feeling 100%, but I knew I had to deliver, and I knew I had to get the interview done because the guest had committed to that time, and I did as well. So you just have to find creative ways to, do some Tony Robbins motivational exercises before you turn on record, I think.
Yeah, I just attended live, my first ever Creative Live workshop, and if you don't know what that is, check out creativelive.com. And I went out and saw in San Francisco Alex Bloomberg, who is from This American Life and Planet Money, and a big, long-time radio producer and host, and has done amazing stuff and is doing some really cool stuff in podcasting right now, including starting his own podcast company. And I went out to see him talk about storytelling. It was a 2-day workshop. And he talked about, I think someone in the audience asked, how do I make it sound less like I'm reading, right? When you have stuff that's scripted, which he does in his show, but he never really sounds like he's reading. Of course, he has an amazing amount of experience and is just highly talented. But he gave some good examples, and one of them was that sort of that stand up. We talk with our hands and we move around, right? You don't when you're tied to a microphone and you're sitting down and you're trying to read. You're not reading. The stuff you're reading is not coming out the same way you talk. So stand up, and if you're going to read, have your voice come out the way that it does when you're actually talking, right? And or don't use punctuation in your writing, or talk out loud. So as you're writing down your script, and this might work if you have an intro or an outro, anything that's scripted in your podcast, say it out loud as you're writing it down, and it'll come out differently. It'll come out on the page the way that you actually talk, right? Because the way we write and the way we talk tends to be much different. So, I thought that was a pretty cool tip. And if you ever get a chance, man, if you're near Seattle or San Francisco, sign up to go to a Creative Live. It is an amazing experience. The best studio you're going to run into. They do live streaming better than anyone I've seen. They treat you like a king. At least in San Francisco, I hear the food is way better in San Francisco than it is Seattle. But an amazing time. And I got to talk to Alex Bloomberg personally for a long time, and so that was really cool. And I did even include this is a round where I'm talking about failures. Totally failed. Did I break out my phone? I had my phone the whole time, was recording my journey. I may or may not be able to release that just in terms of me editing it together and putting it out. Did I take my phone over to Alex? Yes. Was I recording several times? Yes. Did I at any moment say, hey, Alex, just say, hey, this is Alex Bloomberg from whatever. You're listening to the podcast studio. Did I do that? No. Total drop the ball. I couldn't believe that when I got back. I told someone else to do it, and they're like, that's a great idea. So if you're around somebody who is really cool or that you like, why not ask them to do a quick intro for your podcast? Because if you have a smartphone, any type of recording device, it's really easy to do. So that's a fun one to do that you might not always think of. But all right, do we have another word? We can do another wild card.
Comic books.
Ooh. Someone else go first.
Be a superhero with your podcast.
There's someone who watches the Roundtable, Derek Royal. He does a comic book podcast, and I think I might have asked him to be on around today, but he emailed me twice. He was like, man, I really want to be on there. And so, wow, I think, Derek, you might have just missed your shot. Comic books was the one. No, I'm kidding. He'll definitely be on. But comic books, what's funny? I have a bunch of comic books somewhere in a box. Might not even be. It's probably at like my dad's house. Who knows where it's at? Most of them were not read. I was a kid always trying to figure out how to make money. And so, I didn't even enjoy the comic book. I did read some comic books, but I collected comic books more for the investment that I thought they might be than the actual entertainment of comic books. So I have comic books still somewhere in a box. They've got the plastic sheet with the cardboard backing, and they're just all there in mint condition. And number one, Web of Spider-Man. The Nam I have number one of that. A couple number ones.
There's that show on A&E, right? The comic book, with the Kevin Smith show.
Kevin Smith does a lot with comic books, and he's got a lot of shows, and he's got his hands in a lot of things. So I don't know about the show, but
I think the only reason I know that is because I watch Walking Dead, and the promos come on like every commercial break. So, but I think that as you were saying that it speaks. There's probably a ton of podcasts that are for collectors, right? Like you said, there's a comic book one. There's probably like a figurines one, because my brother was the same way. He would collect cereal boxes of like the Wheaties box with Michael Jordan, and he felt like he needed to have two of those, and they're all sitting in the closet. He's got like the figurines of like the New Kids on the Block in the box unopened, and all just these random things that at some point you probably think they're going to be valuable, but not so much.
Yeah. Anyone else? Corey, you ever collect comic books?
I've never looked at or touched a comic book, but being a sports fan, baseball cards were my thing.
Yeah, me too.
And I don't know if comic books are the same. Probably not, but I have boxes of baseball cards from the 80s that are
the same, man.
So much fun to go back and look at, like the baseball players' mustaches, their facial hair, the glasses they wore, like how unathletic they appeared to be.
Yeah.
So,
Is that
like,
the HGH or weights?
probably both.
It's a little of both. Oh man, yeah.
It's a couple of
Corey,
comments in there.
I've got boxes and the baseball cards are so much worse because I have years upon years upon years of baseball cards, mint condition, in books, full years. If I put them on a pallet, it'd be hundreds. What do I do with these things, right? I mean, it's like, oh, you pass them on your kids. That's like a big anchor to pass on to their life. Like, it's so much weight. It's like, do you just declare bankruptcy and give them away? They're just going to be trashed. Or do you go to a card show? What do you get? Like, could you even get rid of them at a card show? Is a good question.
No.
Probably not.
No,
Probably
they're not really worth anything. What we use them for is that once a year we do a baseball card episode where we get a handful of cards and then play the goofiest card that we have, and then
Nice.
whoever wins the round wins. So
Nice. I like it. Well, I might be able to join in on that episode at some point.
that'd be fun.
Go Giants. Aha, sorry. So I'm a diehard San Francisco Giants fan. We are caught in the middle of a deadlocked World Series, and yeah, it's a big deal for me. So anyways, Jim, call us, and welcome to the end of Podcasters Roundtable.
Yeah, I appreciate it. No, I've got a podcast coming up in like 30 minutes. But I thought you invited me. I thought I'll jump in and just add what I can. And by the way, we're Royals and Giants fans, so we're.
Oh, how does that happen?
It's a total. Well, we live in Omaha, which is near Kansas City, so we've been rooting for the Royals for the last couple of years. I grew up in the Bay Area, so I'm a Giants fan. Never in a million years did I think
Yeah.
we would make it at the
You're this guy. You're this guy back in 1989. He had a hat, and one side said Giants, and the other side said A's.
Oh yeah. No. Oh, I never was an A's fan. Never.
No, but hey, two teams on one side. I don't know. I've got opinions about it, but it's okay. You know, hey, the Royals fans, they seem nice enough, but next year, you got a taste this year, next year.
know.
Right?
I don't know.
The Giants really need it, you know.
The Giant. Hey, it took me a whole life.
Royals.
All right, we won't degrade into a baseball podcast, but we get to blame Harry. As you can see, the light is changing and everything. If you're not watching on video, everything's gone blue because of the mixed color temperature. The webcam is confused, but anyways, Jim, why don't you pick one? Have you been hearing Harry's wild cards? Any thoughts?
I'll just go back to the keyboard because I think, as we were talking about that.
That's my keyboard right there. Even the 10-digit back, the 10
right.
key, that's the one. My dirty keyboard, that's
These are the best keyboards ever for podcasting because they are quiet.
They're pretty
And
quiet.
I use them both here and at work for the podcast that we do at work, and I won't let a regular keyboard on at all because it's just
you're
too
such a fanboy.
clickety-clacky, and I'm a Windows guy, right? This is the weird thing about it. I am a Microsoft guy, but the Mac keyboard is just the best, and so that's one of those things that I like it when people, because you can type quietly and not have everybody else hear it.
Does that make you a keyboard snob?
It does make me a keyboard snob. I've never heard that before, but maybe that's what I am.
It's funny to me that there's any division. We talk about Mac versus PC people. I like tech personally. I like them both. What works, right? I like them both. So, hey, should we do one more wild card here, and then we'll let everyone along their merry ways, and at the end here, well, let's do one more wild card.
Okay. Christmas Day.
Ooh, coming up. Too soon. Although completely rehashed. I mean, redone for me. Like my daughter, she just turned 3 and just had a 3rd birthday. She is completely aware now that it's her birthday and it's her day, and that I might give her a couple of gifts, and that it's for her, right? And aside from thinking every day leading up to her birthday is her birthday, it's a blast. So I am 1,000,000% looking forward to Christmas Day because it's going to be a lot of fun in my house. And, hey, I get to play with all the toys. I get to go buy the toys that I used to like, right? But, if I had to relate that to podcasting, I will not be podcasting on Christmas Day. Most stores take at least one day of the year off, and it tends to be Christmas Day if they take a day off. And, I don't know who's going to I wonder who's podcasting on Christmas Day.
Doesn't sound like anyone is.
No one here. Crickets.
No, but it is a perfect time for unboxing, right? So if you're a tech podcaster and you do those tech, those unboxing, Christmas Day afternoon, unbox it.
I'm sure there's plenty of live streaming of Christmas Day these days, right?
Probably.
Throw up webcam, have your family join you, right? Even people far away, right? You got people in military or other countries now can amazingly at least check in via webcam or Google Hangouts and at least maybe participate in a way that we couldn't do before. So that's like pretty exciting. I didn't even think about that.
If no one's podcasting on Christmas Day, is anyone doing a holiday-themed episode?
The holiday-themed episode. I feel like we've all kind of gone there once. I feel like we did something. We did thanks, right? We did here on Podcasters Roundtable. We did what are we thankful for as podcasters, and it was sort of coincided with Thanksgiving. But yeah, you guys anyone done a holiday theme with their podcast?
We actually have one coming up, so I'm going to have Ryan K. Parker on. But we're going to talk about cooking and Thanksgiving and tech, right? Because and he's got all kinds of cool tech gadgets for cooking. So
Nice.
we're going to blend all those together for Thanksgiving.
Jim, what
Will it blend?
Will it blend?
A turkey in the pan, and will it blend?
Jim, what kind of lighting are you using as I sit here and look at
Yeah, so Cowboy Studios makes
Okay, the good cheap stuff. As long as you don't move them, they'll stay together.
They're actually bolted to the ceiling down here, so they come down as opposed to sitting on the floor because we're always kicking them over, and you don't want to kick those over more than once.
Is now yeah, right. Are they in you talking about soft boxes with CFLs in them, or what? What are you?
Yes, yeah.
And-
well, they got the umbrellas. No, it's the
Oh,
umbrellas.
it's umbrellas.
Umbrellas.
Reflective or through? Shoot
No,
through.
right through. Transparent.
All right. Yeah, it looks good. You have one on each side of you.
I do. Yeah.
No
that was
background light, just the
that was
lights.
that's just those. I've got a little warm lighting here, kind of that adds a little bit of a tone to
I
it,
like
just so
it.
it's not all
Very nice.
It's not all bright. But by the way, when we say Christmas, these were Christmas gifts. So another buddy that I podcast with sent me. He's like, here's some great lights for Christmas. And so
Very
it's cool.
nice.
It came the day before Christmas, and I wasn't expecting it, and that's a great podcaster's gift.
Yeah, it looks fantastic. What camera are you using?
C920.
Okay, yeah, so that's what I'm using. That's what a lot of us use. Awesome. C920 with those lights. And are you using the webcam settings? All right,
Yeah. You know, with the C920, though, you got to be careful because it is a resource hog. And so, I was running it on a Core i3, and I had to bump up to a 7 this last summer just to run the camera. So
it's funny because one of the billings of the C920 is that it's supposed to offload the compression to the camera, right?
I don't think the drivers are written well for Windows. So I think it works great on a Mac, but on
it does.
Windows it's not great.
Which is ironic because when you buy this camera, the big question is, can I use it with a Mac? Because it doesn't say it's Mac compatible, but it works great.
I think it works great. So for Windows folks, if they just need a good picture, I usually step them down to that 630 as opposed to the 920 because they don't need all that horsepower and it won't bog down their PC. So just watch that. With one time, get on a slower PC, turn on your webcam, and watch your system resources come to a grinding halt. Then go in the Hangouts and slide that HD bar down a few notches, and it'll pop right back up. So it's really the HD settings in Google Hangouts paired with the 920 that really drive those resources pretty high.
Interesting. Well, you got good results there.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So Ray, are all those links going to be in the show notes? All those products?
Check out the event page.
Just go to Amazon, search Cowboy Studios.
There you go. Well, who's kind of Jim? You don't have an affiliate gear page there or something? Go to the
I'm
podcast.
sure I do, but give it somebody else.
Rewind and look up the
Dave
stuff.
Jackson needs it right now at this point. He's replacing his car.
That's right.
He's going to need something in Amazon.
Yeah, someone made a joke about he should have asked for a company car now that he's director.
Poor Dave. I'm sure I'll hear about it this weekend.
What's funny is that Ray was able to identify the quality of your lights just by looking at your video and just kind of hone in on the fact that you've got. Apparently, the rest of us have crappy lights. He didn't single us.
He caught 2 lights. I have no idea how he did that.
It's just
2 there. Nice. They must be the reflection in the glasses.
No, you in fact, and that is a very hard thing to control. Well, when we do interviewees that have glasses and we've got all these lights up, that's not a fun situation. And I work with scientists a lot, and a lot of them have glasses for whatever reason. But it's very difficult. So I'm assuming yours are up high enough to not
put them up high, and then I don't tilt them down, and so I just get really good, bright light.
Yeah. No, it works. It's nice and even. Like you said, you got a little bit of the warm going on, which is you mixing up a little bit. That's very good. Jim has spent a little time thinking about lighting.
You can tell the difference when I shut those off. That
Very
warmness
nice.
kind of goes away.
That's the key. Mm-hmm.
The other thing you want to have too, if you're going to do that, you got to have a remote control, right? So that's the geek.
So he turns it on and off with the remote. So yes, we are geeking out right now, but that's good. I mean, I guarantee someone else is going to be interested in the lighting setup, and that's probably. What do you think total cost is on your let's call it your live streaming setup right now.
Mm.
Microphone looks like an ATR 2100,
It's an ATR,
$50.
50, 60 bucks.
Get
Lights
that
are
arm.
$75. The arm's the most expensive.
How much are the lights?
They're about $75 probably. And you get
75 for 2?
No, you get 3 for that.
Oh, okay. Again, these are lights you don't want to be
You do not
traveling
want to
with.
haul them around. Yeah, don't take them anywhere. Bolt them down and leave them there. And then, the arm's the most expensive. These are the road arms, and they're $99.
Yeah.
Although we've been testing out some cheaper ones for like 25 in that range, and they're not too bad. The Newer, I think, is the brand. Newer, something
Yeah.
Newer.
Newer. I have a light.
Newer.
It's
Yeah.
It's one of those weird generic Amazon brands. Some Chinese brand, I'm assuming.
Yeah, well, I shipped one. We had a brand new podcaster, and he didn't have a setup, so I bought him a mic and an arm and shipped it to him, and that was $100 for those two, the $25 arm and a $65 mic, and boom, he's set up and ready to go. So he hasn't reported any problems with it, so it's not a bad way to start.
Yeah, awesome. Well,
There's some comments in the chat about Christmas related.
sweet. What do you got?
We got Remy, he's going to make me butcher this
Good luck with that
one. La Victoire.
Nice.
We're going to re-release the Star Wars Christmas special on Christmas Day. And Fred Castaneda, I have published 3 podcast show episodes on Christmas Day. That's impressive. And Jason Bryant, I did the 12 Days of Rustling Christmas on a short episode around the holiday season.
Very cool. So, Harry just auditioning to be a roundtable co-host here, keeping up with the chat, tossing out our wild card names and participating. Kudos.
Got to give the people watching some love.
Nice. Oh yeah, the chat room is awesome. Again, that's why I said you got to check out the links. It's worth it, even if you just go and scroll through. So I always have fun after the roundtable going through and doing the +1s and seeing what everyone is talking about while I'm trying to think of what's next. So we can head out the door. But Corey, any Christmas Day podcasting related thoughts you had?
Well, you kind of hit to it. Well, one of them that you mentioned, using Google Plus, that's something that we do with our family because we're in different parts of the country, and so each person can get on a Google Plus Hangout, and we basically all morning just leave the computer up, the camera on, and the kids can kind of go in and out when they want, and it works pretty well. I mean, obviously a little bit choppy because I'm sure that half the people in the country are doing the same thing. But another thing with Christmas is maybe 3 or 4 years ago, my wife, who's also a podcaster, she bought me an MDX 4600, the compressor limiter gate. And I use condenser microphones, which I'm sure everyone on this panel would say don't use a condenser microphone.
It depends. It always depends.
Right, and so I would agree with that until I got the MDX 4600 because it made a world of difference and kind of made me fall in love with these microphones again. So.
And that's because you're using the gate to shut off when you're not talking.
Right,
That's
especially if you have people in the same room. These things just pick up everything. But somebody can almost sit right next to me, and with that gate, you can have a lot more control over it. So it makes it sound. You get that warm sound that a compressor microphone has, and you don't get all the background noise.
Condenser microphone. We know.
What did I
say? You say compressor. You're just mixing your gear. How aggressive do you have to put that gate on if you have someone next to you?
Fairly aggressive. I mean, not so aggressive that it sounds weird. It doesn't really cut out if somebody starts soft and goes louder or anything. I mean, it still gets everything it needs to. So.
Can you look over and tell me exactly what the setting is on your MDX? A lot of people have that, so that they're probably. It's a common question, like how do you set that thing up? So just for curiosity's sake, remember you can't just take someone else's settings and apply it to your show, but it was interesting.
I'm looking at it from a distance, and it's between
from
10 o'clock and noon.
10 o'clock and noon. All right. So if you're curious, if you're running one of those, you can compare it against your settings. Daniel, you probably have the same thing going on.
Yeah, I've got an MDX 4600 as well, and I run multiple channels, my multiple in-studio microphones, as well as when I have a Skype co-host, I run them through the MDX 4600 as well.
And so Corey's at 10 to 12. What are you sitting at there on your?
Well, every channel, this is what I love about the 4600. It's a 4-channel compressor limiter gate. So every channel is a little bit differently configured. But my channel is, well, it has 4 different knobs. So I'll tell you, my I can't see the actual numbers from here, so I'll give you clock positions. My threshold is at about 9:30. I don't even know what that is. What knob is that?
Common problem with the MDX, or just this gear in general.
Okay, trigger is at about 9:30. The threshold is at about 9 o'clock. My ratio is at about 11:30. My dB gain is at about 2 o'clock, and limiter is just, I think, one notch above where it was, or maybe it's at its bottom setting. And that's for my channel.
Your ratio, what is your ratio, like around 3 to 4 to 1? Probably. Trying to remember that.
Yeah, it's 4 to 1 is at 12 o'clock.
Based on my recollection of mine, I actually, for Christmas Day, I would like a DBX, which is a step up, but it has in my opinion, you don't think so, huh? It has a cleaner gate
Okay, maybe a cleaner gate, but the thing is, most of the people I hear using a DBX 286, the voice is just over-compressed, over-modulated.
It could be settings.
Too boomy. Yeah, that's the thing. It could be settings. But every time someone says, yeah, I have a DBX 286, I can tell because they're over-modulating, over-compressing.
Yeah, it's interesting. No, I'll have to check it out. From what I hear, the quality's a little better, but you never know. It's good to hear the experience of different people. And I'd still like one. I do have the MDX. If you need a cheap or cheaper or cheapest or affordable, the MDX is certainly that. And what's nice about the MDX is you get the 4 channels, right? So if you're going to bring in Skype and you want to put some compression, or if you want to do some stuff on your Skype channel, you can do that, as well as your own individually. You don't have to sort of blend them all together. So individual control over the channels is always most desired for me personally. But the MDX is an affordable way to get into that. I find it sounds like one of the gates on one of mine is making sort of an audible sound when it opens and closes. So I'm not sure if it's a Behringer. So take what you will from that. So I'll just say that. Maybe don't travel with it, which I have done. But so I guess that's it. Harry, thanks for putting together some wild card for us.
No problem.
It's a lot of fun. It took us everywhere. That was enjoyable. Hopefully people in the chat room, and if you're listening to this in the podcast version, which live shows tend to attract less people than we'll actually hear this in the podcast version. So appreciate you listening at whenever you can. That's awesome. And we'll go on out of here. We'll ask everyone to sort of give us your one place we can find you plug so we can check out your podcast. And if you have a closing thought, feel free to throw that in too. But I don't think I mentioned this, and I meant to bring this up. Good thing I remembered. Roundtable, I believe 2 weeks from today is like the 6th of November. I won't promise that date, but the next Roundtable plan is to do the legal aspects of podcasting with Gordon Firemark. So I know a lot of people have requested that. We've been planning to do that for a long time, and our challenge will be, because I think he's been on my show, The Podcaster Studio. I think he's been on Daniel's show, The Audacity to Podcast. But the challenge will be to not make it how-to, right? Which is what we want to do here, and more about just a discussion. We'll just want to have a discussion about the legal aspects of podcasting. So if you are interested in that, go sign up at Podcasters Roundtable and let me know. Maybe we can get you into the round. I know I have a couple people in the sort of in the queue who said that they're interested in the legal aspects of podcasting. So we're going to put that together, and we will see you in a couple weeks with that one. So check out podcastersroundtable.com, even if you can't catch it live, for the archive. Corey, thanks for jumping into this disastrous roundtable and helping us out.
Well, thanks for inviting me on. And I'm Corey Finneran, and you can find me, I guess the best place is the IVMB podcast, ivmb.com, podcast on the Chicago Cubs.
Awesome. Yeah. Someday, Corey, someday. Daniel, thanks for joining us, as always.
Yeah, I'm Daniel J. Lewis from mypodcastreviews.com. And the moral of this podcast, I think, is when everything goes wrong, have a round table or have random question time.
That's right. Just go with it, man. The beauty of a podcast is you can do anything you want, right? We didn't have a producer yelling at us because we're not doing the content that was assigned to us. We're not going to get fired. I'm pretty sure, Daniel, you can still have your roundtable job tomorrow. Everyone's welcome back, and the show will soldier on. Harry, thanks for being a brand new roundtabler. Looks like Harry's even working the mute button. Oh my God, Harry is a pro, right? So thanks for being the new roundtabler and helping us out with Wildcard, and thanks for having me on your show. And I look forward to hearing that come out because that was also fun, a lot of fun.
Yeah, Ray. Thanks so much for coming on the show. You can find me at podcastjunkies.com, where I interview other podcasters. I really had a blast, and I think the live element, is fun because you never know what's going to go on, and it's interesting to see people commenting and giving them some love, and the flow is just, you never know which way the show is going to turn, and of course the fan kicks in now in the room, so hopefully you guys aren't hearing that, but I had a lot of fun. It was a blast, and I definitely would love to jump on again. I really love the energy with you guys.
Awesome. It was a blast. And so thanks again. Maybe the roundtabler with the best hair ever. Harry's got the good hair going on, man. So if you're not watching the video version, you're missing out. You're missing out on Harry's awesome hair. So very cool. Having a little fun there. But do you have both spellings that someone could potentially put in for Podcast Junkies? Y with an S and IES?
I actually do not. So it's Podcast Junkies, podcast JUNKIES.com.
Right. Awesome. All right, cool. Well, check that out, and go find out more about other podcasters. And if you listen to this show, that's probably interesting to you. So cool. Thanks again. And Jim, thanks for jumping in late. Right, a little pitch hitting there at the end, and go Giants.
Thanks for having me on. Yeah, go Royals. And at theaverageguy.tv, and I say go live or go home.
Go live or go home. So Jim is all in on the live.
You bet. Love it. I love it. Love what you guys are doing.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. It's a blast. Jim, not a new roundtabler. You have been here before. And thanks for the lighting breakdown. And if you guys have more questions about his setup, it's my job. No. If you guys have questions, contact Jim, and he'll hook you up with his setup. And I'll try to include some links, at least for the lighting, in the show notes for this round. All right, well, that's it. Another roundtable, successfully averted disaster, and I enjoyed it a bunch, and maybe more than most, because, as I said, this is exactly what I love doing. I just want to geek out with my friends. You can see we spin off in all kinds of different ways for this one. The lighting for me was a lot of fun. So, all right, check us out next Podcasters Roundtable, and till next time, wave everybody.